Hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the globe you are. We appreciate you taking some time with us. We've got 2 hours today with a fairly packed agenda for us. In just a moment, we're going to run through introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about a brief overview of what Amazon Connect is. We're going to spend a bit of time talking about the different data sources that we're going to have access to. And then we're going to talk about some advanced capabilities. And then Alex is going to run us through a workshop so that you can build some of what we're going to show today. And then we're going to show some advanced stuff that we're going to lay the groundwork for that you will be able to get to eventually. And then towards the end, we'll do our best here to save at least five to 10 minutes for questions at the end. So introductions, I'm Jeremy Puent. I'm a principal solutions architect for Amazon Connect. At Amazon, we always say it's day one, and I'm on day one, 2,317. So if you're not a math wizard, that's about 6.5 years. I'm one of the original 4 SAs that launched Amazon Connect, and I've spent a little over 30 years in the contact center space. I'm really excited at what we're going to be able to show you and what you're going to be able to do with that information. And I'm joined by my better looking and smarter counterpart, Alex. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. My name is Alex Schremeyer. I'm a senior solutions architect here with the Amazon Connect team. Been with AWS for going on 3 years, and happy to dive in and bring everyone through this process here today to really extend some of the data that's available inside of Amazon Connect and find some of the different ways that you can act on that data using different utilities. So I'll hand it back over to you, Jeremy.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. So hopefully everybody here was able to attend the session yesterday, the business session. If not, no biggie. We're gonna cover everything you need to know. I would also hope that everyone at this point knows what Amazon Connect is, but for anybody who isn't aware, if this is your first time, you're more than welcome to be here as well. You're gonna listen and learn a lot as well. Amazon Connect is our cloud contact center, easy, simple, with pay-as-you-go pricing, right? We built it to solve problems that we were having at big Amazon on the retail side, right? Amazon.com side. Um, and so it's super flexible, allows you to create dynamic and personalized experiences for your customers. It's a very open platform with AI and ML running in its core, right? So things like built-in natural language understanding using Lex and large language models, contact lens to analyze the contacts, whether they're calls or chats, and look at the transcriptions, get sentiment, get lots of the data that we're going to be talking about today. So that's what we're here to discuss. And we're really going to dive in to the analytics side of this. And the key word that I think you need to focus on this slide is insights. I think traditionally historic legacy platforms, everybody focuses on and talks about metrics. And a metric is a number, but it's not actionable in and of itself, right? If I say, hey, you're at 83% of your service level, that doesn't tell you if it's good or it's bad. It's not actionable. It's not an insight. To get insight, you need a little more information. It's 83%, but it's trending up 12% since the same time yesterday. That's good. That's actionable, and that's good news. Or the opposite, it's 83% and it's trending down 12% from the same time yesterday, right? If you were at 95% yesterday, you're at 83% today, that's a problem. You need to go figure out what's going on and take some action. And that's where metrics become insights, and insights inform actions, either current or future. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So how can we use this data in a continuous cycle to improve or provide the data to make the next improvements, take the next action, right? You think about forecasting and resource planning. You think about informing better decisions. Do you need to make changes because you're offering 7 options in your IVR, and the most commonly taken path is the 7th option? That should be the first option. So what kind of data can you get to inform those things? When you look at your agents, how are they handling the conversations? How can you streamline their workflows? That's the kind of data we need. And that's what's going to inform the future interactions. And that's where we want to get to. So first we want to talk about and start with, what do you get with Amazon Connect out of the box reporting? Because there's a lot there that you get out of the box before you look at adding on and tweaking things. We have access to real-time information for the queues, the agents, the routing profiles. You can drill down, pick and choose, filter. You can save the reports. If you're the manager and you have rights, you can share that report out. So you can create a report, set it up, configure it, and send it out to your team and say, hey, these are the metrics I'm going to hold you accountable for. This is the view you should be using, right? We can use real-time alerts from Contact Lens to trigger notifications to let supervisors know if certain criteria is being met, right? Or things are going good or bad, so that they know they need to go take action. We have similar capabilities for the historical reports when we look back in time and say, how did we perform last week, right? And we can schedule these as well. So you can filter and group and save the reports. You can also schedule them. And when you schedule them, it's intelligent scheduling. You can do something like every day, send me the previous day's reports, send me yesterday. On the first day of the week, send me last week. On the first day of the month, send me last month. And the reporting system is going to be intelligent enough to know that March has 31 days and April has 30 days and February has 28 or 29, depending on the flip of the coin or whatever rounding we're doing to even out the miscalculations in how we do calendaring, right? So all of that's taken into account for you. With historical reports, you can also display login and log out information. You can schedule these. They've grown and expanded from the early days of Connect based on customer feedback. So there's a lot here out of the box. We also have the ability to go in and search for contacts. You can go in and look at this data so that you can start to dive deep into individual records and see the detailed information. But what's important here is this is the information, the key information, that's going to start to feed what we're going to be talking about today in the additional data discovery and ways that we're going to be able to slice and dice this data. We're going to spend some time a little later talking about that bottom right area, attributes. These are key value pairs of pieces of information. We're going to take a look at some powerful ways to use that. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but keep that in mind as we start to dive through this. We also have access to CloudWatch. This is where we can get instance statistics. We can look at concurrent calls and queue statistics and how many calls are waiting in queues, and we can access APIs like the get current metric data APIs or get metric data APIs to access CloudWatch information and get more and more information to put together the views that you need to run your business. And if you need to access auditing information, we can start to look at CloudTrail. CloudTrail is going to do that. And you can see the actions taken by a user or a role or a service through CloudTrail. Any of the public APIs include CloudTrail writing. Not everything in the UI does yet. As we look at our roadmap, we're always continuing to improve this service, and we're working to migrate everything in the Amazon Connect UI to use public APIs so it will log the CloudTrail for all actions. We're getting there. We're making progress. More to come later this year. So when we take a look at the places we're getting data, my mental model and the way we break this down is we sort of lump the data coming from Connect into three big areas. Today, we're going to focus on the two that are highlighted in orange there under the execution logs: contact records and contact lens output. These are the two pieces of data we're going to take today in the first workshop here and build some reporting and dashboarding around that Alex is going to run us through. But we look at the execution logs that include all of those things. We also have real-time event streams, contact event stream, agent event stream, voice ID events, campaign events. All of this data becomes available as well, along with down in the monitoring bucket, the CloudTrail logs and the CloudWatch metrics. And we're going to take a look at how this Connect data can marry up with even more of your data, enterprise data, to create even more powerful views. We also have reporting APIs that are available. So I touched on a couple of these a minute ago. There are different APIs available to get different pieces of information that you may want or need. So you want to keep those in mind if you're trying to expand and take this beyond. So what we're going to do is we actually have a series of blogs. There are 5 blogs out there. I'm going to leave the QR code up, and this information is going to be linked in your workshop as well. But there are 3 different blogs that we're going to go through as part of this series. This is a 5-part series. And so we're going to go through 3 of the parts of this series today in this workshop. And you can see the overview of the first part, and Alex is going to dive a little deeper on this, but it's going to be about taking the Connect CTR data, that contact trace record data, and streaming it off and then making it visible through QuickSight. The second blog is going to add to this the contact lens data. So now we have the contact record data and the contact lens data, and now we're going to marry the 2 together and add visualizations on top of that. And then the third one is going to be some of the framework to make all of that go together and pull it together into the powerful dashboards that we're going to use. Now, the examples we're doing today are using Amazon QuickSight, but if you have different BI tools that you use as an enterprise organization, you can point those at that data as well and use that tool. This is going to work regardless. As we think about what does this data look like, Amazon Connect puts everything out in JSON format. So this is, for those of you that are coders, JavaScript object notation. On the left, we have a sample of a contact trace record. So this is what that data looks like. And on the right, we've got some contact lens data going on here. And this is going to sorry, that was contact data. This is contact lens data. So this is going to be the data that we're going to consume in this new data lake pipeline, and then visualize through the tools that Alex is going to walk us through. So this is what that data lake would look like when we take all of the data sources into account. And this is going to set you up for your path to the Amazon Connect data, contact lens data, data from campaigns, as well as third-party data. So if you have additional data that you want to add into this based on, other interactions, website data, all of the things that you care about related to a customer, you're going to pull all of this together, and then we're going to use this ability to visualize it. We're using Amazon QuickSight over here on the far right today, but if you're a Tableau shop or a Power BI shop or whatever, you're able to do this same work using that tool with this framework. So with that, we're then going to get to the advanced. So we're going to start with a demo, but before we get to the demo, Alex is going to join us. I'm going to throw the URL for the workshop up on screen here. What we want you to do is open this link. So https://catalog.workshops.aws, then it's /visualize- right? All of that. Or you go to the workshops.aws and you can search for visualize Amazon Connect data and you'll find it. We're gonna have Alex come on and we're gonna kick off the first CloudFormation template. It's gonna take about 6 or 7 minutes to run. And while that's running, Alex is gonna walk us through a demo. Alex?
Great, thanks, Jeremy. Let me go ahead and take over the screen share here. And I did put that workshop link into the chat, so everyone should have access to that and be able to see what's going on there. Let me start to share my web browser here.
Excellent, I see it, looking good.
All right. So everyone should be able to get access to this workshop. This is one of our public workshops, and as Jeremy mentioned, it's going to have 3 main modules. And so what we've taken is we've taken the 5-part blog series and really went through the process of streamlining some of the foundational aspects. And so this is going to be a similar architecture to the overall data lake that Jeremy had just shown. And it's an example of the different types of data that either Amazon Connect utilizes or that it's used within the contact center that you can then report on, visualize, and gain insights with. Because this first process, and really all of these modules are going to be using CloudFormation, it is going to take a little bit of time. It's going to provide us a value of not having to orchestrate and set up Kinesis and S3 and Glue and Athena and QuickSight, the services that you see on the page here. But it does take a little bit of time. So before we get into what we're going to build and kind of see an example of that, I do want to make sure that everyone's able to get to Module 1. This is the high-level architecture of what we're going to be deploying to Module 1. And if you navigate to deploying the solution at the very top of the screen, there's going to be a CloudFormation template. And what we're going to want to do is to download that template in the account that you want to go ahead and use this with. You're going to want to navigate to CloudFormation. I'm going to go through the process of uploading that stack, configuring a few items, and then while that runs, we'll fast forward a bit to what we'll get at the end of this session here. So you can go ahead and download that CloudFormation template, create the script. I'll go ahead and upload it. This is going to be the CTR Analyze Amazon Connect Logs with Athena and Amazon QuickSight file. Actually, yeah. Once we have that file, there are going to be a couple of key things that we're going to want to fill out from a stack perspective. The stack name itself is going to be anything that's going to be meaningful to you. I'm going to go ahead and call this DataViz CTR, because this is the contact record portion of the pipeline that we're going to configure. And what this does is this is going to exhaust or stream the contact records from Amazon Connect via Kinesis into S3 and then allow us to do further processing on it. We're going to keep the default here where we're creating a new Glue database and Amazon S3 data collection bucket for this project. And then we do module 2, we're going to reuse some of the assets that are created. And then for project name, you're going to want this is going to actually create an S3 bucket. And so you're going to want to have something that is globally unique. Test 1, 2, 3 is not going to work for you. I would do some combination of maybe your name, today's date, something that would be unique from a global perspective, and ideally not have anyone else use that. I'm going to go ahead and do the first 3 letters of my last name, lowercase, keep that in mind. Something that makes sense to me. SCH DataViz QS for QuickSight. You do something different, something that's going to be unique for you, that it fits within those parameters. And then we will acknowledge and continue building this CloudFormation template out. Now this is going to take a couple of minutes. So we did mention this takes about 6 to 7 minutes. And we do want to make sure that this gets kicked off so that we're not spending a lot of time waiting. So now that this is kicked off in my environment, hopefully you've had enough time on your own to do this. Trying to monitor chat here as well. If anything comes up, Jeremy, let me know. And if we need to slow down or make any changes, we can go ahead and do so. But we'll go ahead and move on to kind of what some of the outcomes, what are some of the outputs that we're going to get throughout this process. So this workshop today is going to generate 3 CloudFormation templates. We're going to first stream our contact records. That's going to allow us to get insights on our voice contacts, our chat contacts, and our task contacts across Amazon Connect. We're also going to do module 2, which allows us to get insights based on contact lens data. So if you have contact lens in your environment, this will allow you to go ahead and get visualizations based on contact categories, sentiment, rate of speech, non-talk time, other drivers that can impact either positively or negatively the overall customer experience. This dashboard here, I'm fast forwarding into Amazon QuickSight, is going to be an example of a foundational dashboard that we'll get with the available data. Now in here, you'll see that I only have 16 contacts. This is a demo environment that I'm showing you right now, but we'll be able to make some calls and see how that data reflects in this type of a screen. We'll have the ability to extend this, and I'll show some examples with more data and how robust and rich QuickSight can allow you to visualize and take action on that data. But I did want to spend a little bit of time to walk through what is this foundational dashboard that we're going to build as part of this workshop. It's going to allow us to filter based on the specific contact types or channels that we're using. It'll allow you to filter based on your queues or your agents. Maybe you have certain agents that you want to filter on to see their stats and see how they perform, whether it's contacts handled, contact duration. We're going to be able to perform all of those types of filtering layers across the aspects you see on the top here. And that's all because we're using the contact record as our source of truth. We're using that to influence how we can visualize this data. And Jeremy showed an example that in JSON format, this is allowing you to interact with that a little more flexibly to go ahead and get some of the insights and the data across the environment here. Within this dashboard, we'll also have the ability to filter based on contact attributes. And contact attributes provide a lot of flexibility. Contact attributes are used not only for routing or queuing, but a lot of customers will use contact attributes as a core aspect of their reporting. What you can do here is you can filter, let's say, based on a particular sales plan that you may have operating, or a campaign, or other key indicators that you might want to separate from the rest of the organization. You can report and visualize within QuickSight based on those attributes and really allow the data that you're collecting and that you're utilizing shine and be brought out separately from all the other core contact metrics. So you're not defined to just the out-of-the-box contact record mechanisms or keys that are available. You have the flexibility to extend what we provide out of the box with your own customizable contact attributes in this type of a reporting mechanism as well.
So I'm just going to jump in real quick, Alex. This is something I was mentioning a minute ago, and most of my customers have heard me talk about this at length. This is what, as you play with this, is going to turn on all the light bulbs for how powerful this gets. When you're talking about pulling in those attributes and those individual pieces of information, this is going to be the nuggets of gold that you dig through here to find, because it allows you to get deeper insights into the things that actually are driving your business, right? Like average speed of answer still matters, but if Alex's call gets answered 1 second faster than my call, it doesn't mean that he had a better experience than I did, right? But if you can identify that everyone who has a specific service or device or widget from your company is having an issue, or an issue in a certain region or something like that, that's when you start to get real insights that are going to help you drive your business. And that's what my customers get really excited about. So I just want to be sure everybody gets that piece of it.
Exactly. And then the one last kind of tab or layer here that we're going to get out of the contact record level reporting is going to be this agent contact leaderboard. And so similar to what Jeremy was just talking about, is there a particular part of my organization? Is there a particular team or group or routing profile or queue or agent? You see these different layers that you can filter across that are performing differently. You're going to want to be able to know that. You may only care about your particular segment of the organization, or you might want to know all up how things are operating. And you might take a look at things like interaction duration and see outliers, or be able to have these details surfaced automatically for you, so that way you can take action on things that you wouldn't otherwise notice and say, wow, these are handling the same types of contacts. Why are we getting these disparities? And again, this is sample data that's on my screen here, but equipped with your data, with what's happening in your own environments, you'll be better able to identify these anomalies, understand where your trends are, and then be able to set KPIs and be alerted on if those KPIs are, above or below what your typical targets or objectives are. And so this is all going to be powered based on those contact records and those contact attributes as a core piece of Amazon Connect to allow you this extensible method of reporting. And this dashboard is one that you should all walk away with today coming out of this workshop. Like I said, we will talk about some additional ways that we can enhance this, and we will get into contact lens as one of those paths. But did want to make sure that everyone kind of understands what we're getting with this pipeline and really some of the data that's exposed within Amazon Connect contact records. Now on my other monitor here, my pipeline has been deployed. My CloudFormation template is completed, and I'm now in a ready state and ready to move on. Quick poll of the group here. Is there anyone that is following along with us that is not quite at that stage that we need to slow down or make sure that we're good to go?
I'm keeping an eye on the chat. Nobody's saying anything yet, Alex.
Okay. So what we'll go ahead and do is we will go ahead and continue through the process here and make sure that everyone's able to take the next step after running the CloudFormation templates. The CloudFormation template did a couple of different things, and I'm going to bring another window back on the screen here. It did a couple of things for us. It went ahead and not only created this S3 bucket, again, global unique bucket. I used one that had my name, DataViz, QuickSight in it there. It's also going to go to do other things. It's going to create rules. It's going to create our Kinesis Firehose delivery streams. It's going to create some policies under the hood to allow this to happen. And the next step to really configure your Amazon Connect instance to be able to use the assets that were created is going to be by going to the console. And so within the Amazon Connect console, you can get there by in the search bar searching for Amazon Connect. And then once you navigate to Amazon Connect, you'll select the instance that you're going to want to use. In this case, I'm using mine that's titled Demo West. You're going to want to navigate to data streaming. And in your instance, if you don't have data streaming enabled, you'll want to enable it. And then you should be able to find something popped up here. You should be able to find the stream that was just created as part of this event. And so in this case, my stream was titled SCH DataViz QS-CTR. I did have to refresh it to make sure that that showed up. And then from here, I can go ahead and save. And what's going to happen now is that any net new or subsequent calls that you're going to go ahead and place, or chats or tasks that are going to happen, are going to utilize this Kinesis stream and pass the data through to S3 in the architecture that we had shared earlier. Now, one key thing to keep in mind here is I'm doing this in a dev or a demo type of an environment. Don't do this in your production system if you already have something configured. If you already have a data stream that you're using, this is intended to be done here in a POC or a lower environment. So just keep that in mind. Once you make this change and hit save, it will impact the delivery of contacts going forward. If you already have a stream set up, whether it's a Firehose stream or a Kinesis data stream itself, and you want to find out ways that you can integrate this pattern or get data to be delivered to S3 or a data lake in addition to what you're already doing with that data, reach out to your account team. There's certainly ways to reuse and take advantage of existing streaming, but we're going to start from scratch. We're going to start from a net new environment here and a brand new stream specifically used for this instance. So now that I've saved that, now that I've gone ahead and saved and I'm using the new environment, the workshop instructions will also provide you some steps on how to ingest old records. If you have old record that you've already used that you want to ingest into this pipeline, into this process, you can certainly do so. We're not going to follow those particular steps here today, but don't worry, this workshop isn't going anywhere. It is publicly accessible, so it's one that you can go back and refer to and ingest those older records at a later point in time. To move forward here, we are going to go ahead and navigate to Glue. And so within the search, we're going to navigate to AWS Glue. From the left, we're going to go to databases. One key call out here is make sure that we're doing all of this inside the same region. I'm operating out of Oregon or US West 2 right now. That's where my Connect instance is. That's where CloudFormation was. Just make sure that you're operating within the same region so you have access to all the resources that we've created through this workshop. I'm going to have a couple of different files that are going to exist here. If I go ahead and actually just take a look at the created date, I'll see that my SCH data viz QS database is going to exist. That's one that I created with my project name. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And then I'll see that I currently have a single table. That single table is going to be connect_CTR. And that is going to be the glue database and table that we are going to be collecting our Amazon Connect contact records in that are then going to be consumed by other services for visualization and access. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And we'll see the schema. So if you're really interested in seeing, well, how are we deriving the intent based on the contact record? How are we doing the mapping? What is the schema? You'll see that all here. So this is going to be pre-formatted for you. You'll see things like account ID, disconnect reason. You'll see integers, strings. Those are the main data types that you'll see here as well. But you can definitely take a look at that and see how this schema is going to be configured. But for the intent of moving forward here, we are going to go ahead and select actions and view data. Now, this is going to take us into Athena. And so Athena is going to allow us to refer back to this database. In this case, the database that we're working with is SCH data vizqs. Yours is going to be named differently, but we're going to have this connect CTR table that we just validated exists there. You may, if this is an environment that you haven't configured recently, you may need to go ahead and change your settings to ensure that Athena has access to S3 to set up as a query location, in which case you would set that up. And then once that's taken care of, we can go through the process of running our queries and validating that we're actually getting the type of data executed properly through the editor. So there's a couple of things that we're going to take out of Athena here. We're going to have the database. We're going to have our table, again, with the entire schema associated with it. And we're going to be able to go ahead and preview that table. That will open it up as a query. In this case, we're querying in the top 10 results or 10 results. And there's nothing in there yet because this is only going to affect contacts from a forward-looking state. The moment that you turn on data streaming within your Connect instance, it's going to affect any contacts going forward. And so we need to make a few test calls, test chats, whatever it may be, to allow this process to actually populate with data. And there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. Inside your environment, I recommend a quick call flow. You can use the sample inbound call example. You can have a direct to queue example. We really want to get something that's going to generate data. And if we can generate data, then the CTRs, the contact records, will be generated, streamed outside of the Amazon Connect instance via the Kinesis stream, go to the S3 bucket, and then be formatted with Glue, queried via Athena. And then from there, we'll be able to go ahead and analyze it in QuickSight or other types of data visualization utilities that we've talked about already. So right now, I'm going to pause and I'm going to pull up my device. I'm going to call into my environment here and just make a really quick direct to instance call. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do in that environment, but I am going to just make a quick call. So we start to get data in the environment that I'm testing with.
Recording now. Thank you for calling. Your call is very important to us and will be answered in the phone. Weatherphone is brought to you by your trusted local independent American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. Commercial in Franklin.
All right, so I completed a call into my instance here. And then once a call completes and you close the contact, I'm only sharing this window right now, but I did have my CCP up in another window. It does take a little bit of time. So the contact record is going to pull in all the data, all the metrics that were associated with that contact. And you should see that contact record be delivered shortly after the contact is cleared. It's really important that if you're doing testing on your own environment here, that you don't just leave yourself in ACW. You have to go ahead and actually clear yourself out, because that ACW, or after contact work time, is going to be important to the overall contact record. It's going to be something that's included inside of that record, and so it can't be delivered until you actually clear and close that contact that exists. So I'll let everyone take a little bit of time to go through, make a couple of test calls. Again, to get to this type of a state, you're going to want to have some type of data. And when we get to module 3, we're going to go through the process of actually creating the visualizations. But the key pieces right now in modules 1 and 2 is to make sure that we have the pipeline in place, that we're able to get the data out of Amazon Connect, get it into S3, allow Glue and allow Athena to be able to access, apply the schema and query, and then in module 3, we'll go ahead and display these dashboards here. So make a couple of test calls, and then we'll move on to module 2. Module 2 is going to be following the same type of a CloudFormation process. That's going to set up the contact lens, or the call analytics aspect of this blog. Jeremy, anything else you want to add, or anything that you're seeing in the comments or the questions that we want to address before we dive into module 2?
Sorry, no, I've just been running through answering all of the questions in the chat.
Okay. Well, we'll keep things moving then. Hopefully everyone's been able to start to generate a few types of calls, a few examples here. Let me pull something up here, and again, to provide some of that validation. All right, so moving along, we're going to go ahead and take a look at module 2. Bring that back on the screen here. Within module 2, it's going to be a very similar architecture. We're going to use CloudFormation here to kick us off again. In this case, instead of just using the Kinesis streams for the contact records, we're going to also tie into where contact lens data is stored, which is going to be stored within an analysis folder inside of Amazon S3, and set up rules to get those analysis and get some of the details that come out of that file. Things like contact categories, things like issues detected, things like rate of speech or sentiment. And we're going to get that data and include it as part of our overall dashboards that we're going to create here in module 3. And so to do so, we're going to start with deploying the solution. We're going to download this CloudFormation template again. It's going to be named differently. This one's going to say Contact Lens Detailed Sentiment Analysis. And if we go back to CloudFormation, again, keep this in the same region that you deployed everything else. We'll upload a template file. We'll do the one that says contact lens detailed sentiment analysis. And there's a couple of differences in running module 2 here versus what we did in module 1. The stack name is something that, again, make it meaningful to you, but it doesn't need to be the same as what you did before, and it should be a little bit different. So here I'll do CL for contact lens, data viz, QuickSight. There's a couple of key pieces of information that you're going to want to keep on hand for the parameters. The first is going to be your contact bucket. And this is for your Connect bucket, sorry. This is going to be for your Amazon Connect instance that you're utilizing. So inside your Amazon Connect instance, whatever it is that you're doing as part of your test here today, I had previously shown what this looked like in my instance I had called Demo West 2. And so I'll bring that back onto the screen here. Inside your instance itself, again, this is the one that I configured the data streaming for, you're going to have a data storage section. And within data storage, this is where you're going to be storing, things like call recordings, and it's also where your contact lens data is going to be stored as well. You're going to take just this first part of it, just the bucket name, and you're going to use that when completing this section. Again, yours is going to be unique. Don't use what you see on the screen because it's going to be different. But you're going to go to your instance and go to your data storage config, instance, start at overview. I went to data storage. You're going to take that first section right there before the slash. And you're going to go ahead and pass that in the connect bucket input. Now you have a couple of different options. If you were running this as a standalone and you hadn't done anything else, you could create a new Glue database and a new S3 bucket. And this would be something that would exist just with your contact lens data. It wouldn't utilize your contact records or anything that we've done before. But because we're doing these sequentially, we started with module 1 and we created the bucket within. And now we're going to module 2. We're going to use the existing database. And so it's going to ask us for a project name. Now, you should know what that project name is. You had just entered it, but if you don't remember, or if you want to make sure that you get it exact, you can go back to your CloudFormation stack that you just ran. In this case, here's the one that I ran a little bit earlier. And you will see in your parameters, you had previously provided a project name. Again, it's all lowercase. Mine was SCH Data Viz QS for QuickSight. Yours would be something different, but we would want to go ahead and reuse the same project name here to make sure that we're taking advantage of the resources and the assets that were deployed earlier. Once you have these 4 options configured or confirmed, again, stack name, connect bucket that you're using for the instance that we're configuring, the existing project name, and confirming that you're using existing resources, we're going to go ahead and continue through this process. And we're going to let CloudFormation run. This one's going to take about the same amount of time, about 6 to 7 minutes. I'm going to pull this up on another window so that way we're able to dive into, what's next. What are we going to get from the data available inside of Contact Lens? And so while everyone's going through the process of creating this new stack, what we see on the screen here is another table. It's another dashboard within QuickSight. And this one's going to be our contact lens dashboard. And just to reiterate for anyone that, maybe a little bit lost or doesn't quite know what's going on here, I'm showing you an example of what the dashboard that we're going to build in module 3. Just to give you an idea of the data, what data is available, how are we going to go ahead and get access to that data? And then in module 3, we're actually going to automatically create these dashboards. So we need to lay the foundation, we need to lay the groundwork, we need to generate a couple of test calls and get some data. And then in module 3, you'll be able to go through and actually run these yourself. It'll be a single script that'll create these 2 dashboards that each have within them the 3 tabs. So let's walk through some of what you're going to see as you follow along through this process. Similar to the contact records dashboard that we created, you'll be able to slice and dice across things like channel, across things like queue, across things like agent or routing profile. You'll be able to see all up metrics. In this case, all up things like sentiment, which doesn't look very good. But again, this is a test environment, so I'm maybe trying to highlight some of the poorer examples here or see what that looks like. You'll be able to see things like average conversation duration or average agent word per minute. And because you can go ahead and select the different agents or the different routing profiles that are a part of this, I can actually select a particular agent and see, wow, this person talks really fast. That's 226 words per minute versus one of my other agents who maybe talks a little bit slower, maybe has a different contact duration. And again, this is all going to be based on the data that you're selecting. I'm looking at the past 90 days, but I really only have about 15 or 16 records in this particular environment that we're looking at. In addition to the core contact lens type of metrics, sentiment for customer, sentiment for agent, duration, words per minute, non-talk time, which is actually an exciting one. It's one of those metrics there that you typically don't have a lot of insight into. At a high non-talk duration is typically indicative of problems in the environment, whether it's slow systems or tooling or lack of agent training. Non-talk time and be able to take a look at who's really high from that perspective will allow you to drive into maybe agent training that's missing or SOPs that need to be updated. And it's one of the benefits that Contact Lens provides from a data perspective. We can also go to the next tab. And so this dashboard that's going to be generated automatically, it's going to have these 3 tabs. The second one is going to be a Contact Lens leaderboard. So similar to the contact record leaderboard, if I just go back to that one, where the contact record leaderboard gave us things like overall duration or number of holds or really contact level metrics. Contact Lens is able to dive into those deeper. And it's able to give us our agents that have the highest agent sentiment or the agents that have the highest customer sentiment and see if those correlate or see if there's any differences that occur there. You can dive in a little bit deeper as well and see the talk duration. Is Nikhil a talker? Maybe not as much as Martha is. And really be able to go ahead and see what that balance of the overall conversation is with the stats that are available to you. And again, you can rank and stack what's your top or bottom 5, 10, I'm looking at 90 days. These are going to be some of the examples of how these out-of-the-box dashboards will provide you to get insights into this data. And then the last section that we're going to have access to today is going to be based on categories. And so these categories are going to allow you to use Amazon Connect Contact Lens's automatic issue and category recognition to give you insights into what's happening across the environment. In this case, I'm filtered on a particular category, but if I go ahead and select all, I can see that there are a couple of contacts here that have categories assigned. I can see a word cloud in this case, and I can see 2 of them showed to be matching the empathy voice. One of them's really small down here. That's one call where non-talk time exceeded 45 seconds. So I might want to drill into that and see what's going on. And you can see the different types of contacts and really dive into those based on their categories. If I wanted to dive in and see, someone's calling about a fee inquiry, I could go directly to this contact in Amazon Connect and get the full conversation history, the full transcript, the contact summarization, if I needed to dive that deep. But if I just wanted to see what my movers and shakers were, I just wanted to see what's happening across the environment for, again, a particular queue, an agent, a routing profile, or a category, this gives me an easy way to go ahead and get that level of insight and then decide if I need to take the time to dive any deeper.
Alex, I wondered if this might be a good spot. If you could touch a little bit on how the attributes are being processed in here. There was a question around how the attributes, because they're coming in as a string, and I think you touched on the glue component, but maybe it would be good to show how those attributes are broken out in here.
Yeah, so in this particular dashboard, we're using Contact Lens, and so we're seeing categories. If we go back to the first dashboard that we had talked about earlier that you were building the foundational kind of pipeline for, we do have the contact attributes analysis. And so this would allow you to go ahead and dive into particular attributes that are going to exist as part of a contact record. You have the ability, when setting up contact attributes inside of your contact flow, to really do two main things. Make it a part of the current contact or an associated contact, which then lets them live with the contact record when it gets written or stringed out via Kinesis, and then gets structured as a part of that overall schema and can be parsed accordingly if you have multiple attributes inside of it. And then you also have the capability to do flow attributes. And so the important thing to keep in mind is that flow attributes are only going to be used inside the flow. They're only going to be used to do routing or processing, but they're not saved. They're not, saved to disk or saved to the contact record. And so you're not going to see those types of attributes in the screen like what you have here. But if you are saving them as just regular contact attributes, you can then, with the way that we have the schema set up, the way that Glue has its schema set up there's those 30 different objects that Glue is filtering on. You can actually filter and break out. And I'll show you an example here in just a bit of a larger data set and what QuickSight would look like when you have more records in it. Again, you see 16 total contacts here. That's not a lot. I'll show you what an example looks like when there's significantly more contacts, as well as more contact attributes that you can go ahead and filter on and slice and dice. Does that, Jeremy, I think appropriately answer that for now before we get into that broader dashboard?
I believe so.
All right. If my screen is correct, the contact lens portion of the CloudFormation stack should be complete. So hopefully for all of you that are following along at home, you also see a create complete. From a timing perspective, that took me from 45 to 50. So only took about 5 minutes there. Hopefully you're seeing similar results inside your environment. And there's a couple of things that we need to do here to validate the solution. So a couple of things that we need to do after you actually configure or complete this CloudFormation stack in order to go through the process of getting everything to work. So what we'll want to take a look at is in the Amazon Connect instance bucket that we used. And again, if you forget which one you used, you pass that in right here. We'll want to go to S3 itself. So I'm going to type in S3. You could type in Amazon S3. Keep in mind, I did copy that bucket name so I knew what it was, and I'm just going to filter for it right here. And I am following the workshop. So again, anyone that has access to that workshop link should be able to follow along here as I walk through. We're going to search for the bucket name that we're using. We're going to take a look at properties. And one of the things that you're going to want to make sure that you turn on here is Amazon EventBridge notifications. And the reason that we're doing that is if we go back to the architecture, we go back to this page right here, contact lens data is being stored in S3. Then EventBridge is going to be our trigger that's going to send that into Kinesis Firehose and deliver it into the newly created bucket that had formerly only held the CTR records or the contact records. We're also streaming the contact records, and that's why we did module 1 first. And so what we're going to have is a shared S3 bucket that has both our contact records and our contact lens data. And that's us building our data lake. We're building our Connect data lake here by streaming in a variety of different data sources into one place and then pointing Glue at that single S3 bucket. So as we go through and validate the solution here, we're going to go through and make sure that we enable the EventBridge notifications. So that way, any net new calls, any net new contact lens data can be appropriately streamed into our new pipeline that we had just recently created. So make sure that you turn on EventBridge, make sure that you save, and then we'll go through the next process, which is validation, which is going to be making a few test calls. So similar to what we did earlier, where you should have just made some sample test calls and went through the process of validating that that showed up in Glue or then in Athena as you're doing your query. We're gonna do a couple of calls here, ideally, really if you're wanting to test this part of the architecture, with contact lens enabled. So if you have a flow where contact lens is turned on, I know that we've talked about that in previous maximizing sessions. Ideally, this would be the point where you're gonna send a call to the instance that we're working with. Make sure that it is an environment that has contact lens enabled. I can pull up a sample flow that I am working with. Just to give you all an idea, my flow is called recording flow. Does a couple of very simple things. It is going to set logging behavior, so it's just going to set the logs to CloudWatch. The big thing for this particular validation piece to make sure we're getting the right data out is that I'm going to have recording enabled for agent and customer. I'm going to have analytics turned on. You have a couple of options here. You have, the ability to do speech and chat analytics. I have both selected, so that way I can get data from both the chat channel as well as the voice channel. I'm going to select post-call analytics because I'm really focused on this from a historical perspective. I'm using our QuickSight visualizations here to let me know what had happened. So I'm more focused on the post-contact aspects. If you go back to the slides that Jeremy was showing earlier, when he was talking about the different types of data that comes out of a Connect, there's going to be the execution logs. There's going to be the what had happened and the things that really help support the historical aspects. There's going to be real-time aspects. So contact lens has a real-time streaming component. Contact events are real-time. Agent events are real-time. We're not talking about those here today, but you certainly can tap into those data sources if needed. But for the intent of this overall pipeline, I care about post-call analytics. And from here, you can really set whatever you want down below. I am redacting sensitive data. I am generating a redacted and original transcript. I'm redacting PII, and I am replacing it with PII type. Purely up to you what you do from here. We just want to make sure that we do have analytics configured for the channel that you're going to test on. So if you're going to test a chat, make sure this is checked. If you're going to test a voice call, make sure that this is checked. If you're going to do both, check them both. Really not doing much else in this flow. I'm routing it to a queue. I'm setting a single attribute. I'm transferring it. So a really simple test flow that I'm using in my environment to go ahead and get this example here into place. I'm going to place a test call real quick. I'm going to put myself on mute so you don't hear me talking to myself. And while I do so, Jeremy, if there's anything else that you want to add or any questions that you're seeing in the chat that you want to address while I'm making this test call, you can go ahead and chime in.
So I've been addressing the questions as they've come up. I think I've still got one or two I've got to get back to, and there are one or two I've asked for clarification on. But if you're still having other questions, please get them in there, and we will address them. There have been a few questions about the blog series. I've put the link, plus as you're navigating through the workshop, each module has the link to the blog post that its portion is based on. And then within those blog posts on the blog channel, there are links to the full 5-part series, right? Because this is 3 of the 5 portions or parts of this series that are being moved, but they're all available. And as you look to expand this, and Alex is going to touch on with the last demo, some future looking bigger things that you can build or do there. Also, I will mention that I'm going to be putting a link in the chat and in the Q&A, or in the chat, I guess, because I can't post it in the Q&A. Towards the end of this, please be sure that you fill out the survey. We are a data-driven culture. We hope that you're enjoying this series and getting the most out of Maximizing Connect. But as we get to the end of this, I'll drop the link again. But please be sure to provide some data. If you liked this, didn't like this, what was good, what was bad, what you'd like better or different. we need that data to continue improving this series and giving you the best usage of all of our times. Looks like he's still making his test call, talking a little bit there. Okay.
All right, and I did have you turned down just a bit, but I did hear, as I was making my own test calls and doing things on my own side here, that you were able to talk through some of the things that people were seeing, and then also that, yes, we will be showing kind of an example of other things to expect and other things that you can do with this type of data. While others are going through the process of generating their test calls, I actually want to go into that process. Before we get into Module 3, we've talked about laying the foundation, so making the data and the pipelines available for our contacts. That includes contact stats, contact attributes, and then agent level details. We've talked about laying the foundation for our contact lens data, and hopefully we're generating some good calls, whether it's via chat or whether it's via voice, to go ahead and enable visualizations and insights on that data that's available. But there's so much more you can do with this. This is 2 out of a 5-part blog series like we talked about. And we can provide links to all those in the chat. The other parts include integrating with Amazon Lex to get data out of Lex. It includes getting data out of chat. And it also includes the automation of some of these dashboards, which is what we're working with today. Once you have the pipelines, once you have the data available, and once you start to work through what are the KPIs, what are the things that matter to me. You'll notice that these dashboards here, they're a little dry, they're a little vanilla. And that's because every organization's needs are going to be different. We really want to show you how the underlying data itself can be exposed and how you can have access to that, and then allow you to say, here's what matters to me, and then create that next step, create that next level once you already have these pipelines and aspects in play. And so this here is going to be an example of a dashboard that has significantly more contacts. And instead of the 16 contacts that we were looking at in the ones that I recently created here, we'll be able to see a higher view, a higher level of my overall contact center environment. And within here, you'll see that we can visualize and we can really prioritize the things that matter to the organization a little bit differently. If I cared about agent utilization, this dashboard here on the right would be able to go ahead and show me, well, do I have an imbalance? Right here, Olivia's all the way at the bottom with 789 contacts, where Ava's up here at 868. Is that 70 contact delta something that's important to me or not? Maybe you care about disconnect reason, or maybe you care about the blend of contacts into your queues. Or a lot of times I hear customers that want to get insights into their SLAs. Where are SLAs met or exceeded or within our goal? And then be able to drill down into those to go ahead and see why. What was it about these that happened? And you can actually go in and focus only on exceeded. And just like the filters at the top, I can get direct insights directly into, what is happening when we're exceeding our contacts. What are the other things that are affected? What are the other things that happen by my filters that are over here on the right? I'm actually just going to go back and disable that and then get back to our overall view. But you really have the ability, again, as you have more data over more time, to be able to go ahead and see trends, see anomalies. And QuickSight allows you not just to visualize the anomalies, and really whatever tool you use, but to be able to act upon those anomalies. How do you be proactively alerted when your KPIs are about to breach or are breaching? And then how do you get targeted information and be directed towards where to look or what to look for? And with the types of visualizations and insights that you're able to get with this type of data available to you, you're going to get a lot closer to be able to answer those types of questions. The other thing that you can do by unifying your contact center data with other data sources is to really have a single dashboard that can blend the different data types. So really leveraging the contact center data itself with other operational data that matters to you, whether that's CloudWatch data, whether that's order data from maybe another order management platform or system, or other key metrics that help you really unify and bring those together. You're able to bring in disparate data sources. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more and show you what that looks like. But hopefully everyone's had enough time to make some test calls and start getting data into their environment, noting that you're wanting to close your contact and you wanting to go through the process of giving Contact Lens time to analyze. And you should start to see data showing up in your particular S3 bucket. So one of the things that you can go ahead and check from an overall validation perspective is that you're starting to see data in S3. And if I go to my buckets and go to another screen here, if you navigate to your S3 bucket, you should start to have a couple of different data types that are going to be created. So you should see, now I have a couple things extra in mind than you might see in your own. You should see CTR base, and you should see contact lens base. If you follow through the blog series, you'll get chat base and you'll get agent event base, but we're really only focused on you seeing these two at this point in time after following modules 1 and 2. If you open up contact lens base and you navigate to today's date, so this is going to be 2023, September 20th, you'll see in this case a call that I would have just made. I'm in Eastern time, so you see that this record got delivered at about 1:06, so about 2 or 3 minutes ago there. Ideally, you're going to see the same type of data showing up both in your contact lens base folders as well as in your CTR base folders. So you'll see in this case at 1:04, I had a call complete, and then it took a couple of minutes for then the contact lens data to show up in its respective folder as well. Within Glue, if you navigate back to your Glue tables, inside of the same database that we had used earlier, in this case, I'm going to use the one that was based on my project name, instead of just having that connect_CTR table, which again, if you clicked on it, this is where you get to see your schema, and this is where you get to see things like, contact ID be listed, next contact ID, other aspects that are here as a part of the schema. But if we take a look at the table that we actually care about, which is contact lens, we should be able to go ahead and visualize or view this data, and it's going to give us the same Athena prompt as well. And so what this will allow us to do, in this case, we're going to go to the database. Before, we only saw connect_CTR. Now we're seeing connect_contact lens. And we should be able to go ahead and preview that table, open a query, and go ahead and get some results back if we're generating the type of data that we're expecting there. Hopefully everyone's starting to see things in their S3 folder. Hopefully everyone's able to start seeing the changes in Glue and see that those tables exist, because that's the foundational pipeline that's required to go ahead and get these dashboards to be created. And that's going to be the last step that we're going to walk through here today. So if we go back to the workshop itself, we're now going to unify. We've started streaming data in contact records via Kinesis. We've started writing some data to S3, in this case, contact lens data, and we're streaming that via Kinesis. And we now have our single S3 bucket that's forming our Connect data lake. We've been using this project name throughout this entire process. So you're going to want to make sure that you remember or retain that project name as we go with the last CloudFormation template that we're going to create. I'm going to go to deploying the solution, and this is going to have a couple of different steps that need to be configured. So if you've never set up Amazon QuickSight, you're going to want to go to QuickSight via the AWS console and complete a couple of configuration options. Now, I've already created QuickSight in the environment that I'm working with because I'm showing you kind of that forward-looking, what is this and how does it operate? But the steps are going to be right here. There's going to be 4 steps that are going to be inclusive of signing up, selecting the edition that you want to go ahead and use. The key thing I'd call out is that S3 right here is not automatically selected, and that when you check this, you're going to want to give access to the single S3 bucket that was created with your project name. So that is your data lake. That is the S3 bucket that you're going to use to take the data out of and visualize within QuickSight. Now, I know today we're using QuickSight, Amazon QuickSight, as an example of one of the ways that you can visualize this data. And if you decided that you didn't want to sign up for QuickSight, that you didn't want to go through this process and follow along with Module 3, you still have all of the data in your S3 bucket in that data lake that you could use to visualize elsewhere. You may have a different BI utility that you want to use, and you should have that now formatted, consolidated, and able to continue pushing data into that data lake and visualize on in other platforms. If you are going to continue with QuickSight, make sure that you go ahead and follow these 5 steps, inclusive of signing up, selecting your project S3 bucket, not your Connect instance, your project S3 bucket, creating yourself as an administrative user, and then we'll go through and utilize the CloudFormation template. So the CloudFormation template here is going to be just the same process that we did earlier. You'll create your stack. You'll utilize the CloudFormation template that says CTR_CL QuickSight. That's because this is going to create dashboards for us from both our contact records and our contact lens data as a sample of how this can be done. You're going to enter a stack name just like before. This stack name can be anything that makes sense to you. I will do create QuickSight workshop. It's going to ask you 3 questions. Have you deployed the contact lens data lake solution? That's module 2. And so if you're following along here today and you did the contact lens aspect of this, you're going to want to go ahead and select yes. If you don't have contact lens enabled in your environment, or you're not testing this in an environment that has contact lens, you decided that you were just going to listen along and follow and watch how we did this, you would select no at this point. I did both, so I'm going to say yes. If you did module 1, which was a foundational aspect to get the contact records, you would select yes. And then the project name is going to be the same project name that you've been using throughout this entire process. If you forget what it is, you can go back to your former stack and copy it, and we'll use that to generate our dashboards. Now, this particular deployment takes about 10 to 12 minutes. It's the lengthiest of all of them, assuming that you're doing both contact lens and contact records. If you're only doing contact records or only doing contact lens, it'll be a bit quicker, but just keep that in mind. This one's going to take 10 to 12 minutes. And so while we wait for that to run in the background, I'm going to go back to this broader, larger data set. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the different ways that you can consolidate and use both your contact center data with data that might exist in other areas, or to derive insights in different ways. And so we'll see that I not only have a CTR inbound, a contact record inbound section here, I also have a custom section. And the reason for this custom section, you'll see some similarities with the dashboards that we're going to be deploying here today. But this can take different types of data that exists within your environment. It can take geographic data. You can be logging these as contact records. You could be associating phone numbers to zip codes and then break down and dive deeper based on zip codes or area codes, if that helps you derive insight based on how you're doing your operations. Let's say a insurance company who is prepping, it's September here. And so in the US, that means that it's about hurricane season. Maybe being able to see that in September and October, the Gulf Coast or the lower east coast of the United States is getting significantly higher call volumes year over year. It might allow us to make different decisions or insights than if we're maybe tracking promotional campaigns and we can see where certain flyers or certain campaign codes were delivered to different parts of the country and how that may have resulted in net new leads or inbound calls. You can see, again, based on attributes. This is a word cloud of food. Hopefully everyone's had lunch, or if not, this makes you hungry and inspired to eat some ice cream cake. But you can take the data that's available, and there's a variety of different ways that you can, report and visualize that. Jeremy, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say you're killing me, man. My stomach rumbled as soon as you said that.
Well, you can have a healthy and balanced diet of ice cream cake, ribs, and fried rice. Those are the three that somehow stood out to me. Maybe something else stands out to you. As well as being able to go ahead and again, maybe isolate based on different parts of the country. And again, we're using relatively generic data here. We're using foods and cities, but you can see how you can associate, how you can bring that data together and see, okay, well, Miami, they really like this more than the other. And think about how this would operate in your environment. Trying to give you an idea of how you can use the tools and how you can use the data that you're generating to help get the insights and the outcomes that your organization is asking you for. So with this type of data available, I'd start asking yourself questions. What are the things that matter to us? What are the types of data that we want to collect? What's the data that we're collecting today that we're not really able to unlock or do more with? And could there be different ways to review that data? Could there be different ways to display or dive into that data or correlate or associate? And hopefully by going through this process here, can kind of give you an idea of one of the different methods or utilities that you could go for. And these aren't static dashboards either. With QuickSight, you have the flexibility here. Okay, I have a decent amount of records that don't have an associated city. Well, that's skewing my data. I don't really want to see that. So I want to exclude. Similar to how I focused earlier. Now, we're a little bit, it's the same data that exists here, but I'm not having to go through the process of, seeing these outliers. I can exclude them if I know that they don't matter. I can really look at the data that is going to be impactful to me. In this case, attributes city, attributes project time. These are ways that we're using attributes that are associated with the contact center to go ahead and, ask different questions, gain different insights, see what may be happening, in different places based on the data that we're collecting inside of Amazon Connect and the overall contact center environment. The QuickSight dashboards should be taking
Alex,
just a little bit longer. Yeah,
sorry. While you're waiting, there's a question about it sounds like, I think based on the question, they're seeing the data in S3 but not in Athena. So I think there was a permissions granting step you had in there. So
yes. Yep. So one of the things
could you review that real quick?
Yeah. So there's two things to do as far as that goes. So when you are in validation, I'm doing this from module 1. You're going to view the data, which is going to be what gets you into Athena. And then you should see this view settings. You should see the ability here to go ahead and query the results in S3. But that's not something, and again, this is your first time using Athena or using Athena with Glue. It's something that you may have to set up. I've been doing this in a blend of an environment where things are obviously already set up, but also not set up. So I'm kind of walking through some of these steps as we go. But you should be able to see this option here to grant access to S3. And then that should allow you, one, you to see the data in Athena, but two, the ability for then Athena to pass that data along to QuickSight, which we're going to be using here later on. If for whatever reason this pop-up, like if you're not seeing that, you can go to settings. And within settings, it will ask you for your query result location. And so just because this didn't pop up, that's not there, you can still go and configure that and change where you're pointing to and change kind of what that access looks like. And you should be able to return some positive results. So let me move this down here. So an example of that in an actual environment is if I go into the one that is more fully built out, the one I'm at, that I actually have my dashboards in that I've been showing you this future state for. If I go through here and say contact lens, and I do preview table, I open the query. Got a mess of queries up here, but we really just need to care about this one that it's querying from here. It's querying contact lens, and then we're going to go ahead and get those results. I'm limiting it to 10, but we're going to see different examples out of my environment here. In order to support that, I would have gone to settings, manage, and then query result location to make sure that that's pointing to the right place. Remember, our contact lens data is going to be coming out of our original Connect S3 bucket, but then ultimately we will be pointing to our data lake bucket to get the full data lake queries that you're going to do down the road. So that should be that. If we go back to module 3 here, hopefully at this point in time, you're starting to see create complete. And now it's going to be the steps to see these dashboards inside of QuickSight. So if you went through the process of creating a QuickSight organization, or if you already had one and we're passing those details along through your environment here, you should be able to go ahead and see a couple of dashboards created. In this case, this dashboard here and this one here are the ones that we've been looking at this entire time. So I'm in the account that has kind of the forward-looking dashboards that were created. And if you open either of those, you can right-click and open a new tab if you want to open them both at the same time. Those should start to populate data, and we'll see the examples that we were looking at earlier. So we'll see my 16 records and my 3 records here. And one of the things about these QuickSight dashboards that's going to be important to keep in mind as you're starting to work through them, as you're starting to get data in and as you're testing, is that you can actually schedule these. So you can schedule how often do these run. How often am I going to refresh my particular view? And so, I can call this demo test, and I can go ahead and select the dates. Is this a monthly dashboard? Is this a daily dashboard? Is this something that I just want to do once? I just want to do it right now because I want it to run and I just want to see what's happening, or I want it to run in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. You have the ability at a dashboard level to configure these types of schedules based on your level of access to the data. So this could be something that you do, let's say custom. I run this during a couple of different times of the day, or I run it every day at a particular time, really giving you that flexibility to decide when you're refreshing this data. When we think about the overall pipeline, and we think about how QuickSight is going to get access to this data, and how it's not only going to visualize and the updates from this perspective, but what happens to the data under the hood, that's all going to be configured here within your data sets. And so you'll see I have a couple of different things that are here. I'll have contact categories on contact records. I'll have connect contact lens. I'll have my connect CTR. I'll have my connect contact attributes. And within each of those, you can have the ability to see when they were last modified. And if needed, especially more like a testing scenario where you're running through the process and you know that you've made new calls and you want to go ahead and see things update a little bit quicker, you can actually go through the process of forcing a refresh. And so here you can see, I did a refresh, it ingested so many rows. Was it a manual refresh? Was it a full refresh? What did that process look like? And so you can go ahead and run that process. Say, is it going to be incremental? Is it going to be full? And then it'll go ahead and come back. It'll, say that it's completing, It's say in this case that it's running, and it's going to be looking for, what's changed over the past hour. And then it's going to pull that data. It's going to take a look at that underlying data that's coming in the S3 bucket, formatted via Glue, queried via Athena, and it's going to go ahead and either ingest additional rows and let me know what it has done, or say that it's good to go and that nothing has changed. And you don't have to sit on this and look at this either. You can actually go through the process of updating multiple data sets. So you could go through the process of, I know that I've made some calls on this meeting right here. I could go ahead and refresh all 4 of these if I wanted to. And then once they're all done, I can go ahead and tap in and see, are my dashboards now giving me new updates? Instead of scheduling an update, I can kind of force that process here and then take a look at how that's going to be consumed from a visualization perspective. See, it'll tell you if it failed too. Looks like I had something fail back in July, and it'll give me the exception and what had happened, and be able to go from there. And then if he's complete, so you see it's in progress, I'll go to maybe one of the first ones that I had done. In progress. 16 rows imported. So completed, no new records to go ahead and add for this particular example here. I can go ahead and see, now, or I guess I did add, I was at 8 records, now I'm at 16 rows. And then that would be reflected then in my dashboards if I go and refresh those, and I can see some additional data. So hopefully everyone's being able to see that process of the dashboards created and the underlying data sets created for you automatically without you having to do any action inside of QuickSight. And that really gives you this foundation. It gives you kind of what we've talked through and walked through here. It should give you the ability to see, from a channel perspective. Maybe you did a chat example and you did a voice example. Here, I just refreshed. Now I have 20 contacts. That's been showing 16 for the past hour and a half. And so now we see net new data. We're seeing data that's coming in here on the 20th, in addition to data that I had on the 18th. If I go ahead and scroll this out, I can see data from July 20th, September 18th, and September 20th. I can go
Alex,
ahead and take a look.
Sorry, we've got a question. Will this also create analysis as well? And I'm not quite clear on the question there, but I think, what we're setting up is going to give you some queries that we've built as part of this workshop, but then you can enhance them above and beyond, right? Is there anything you'd add or say differently there?
No, I think that is a great leading question into an area that we should probably talk about a little bit. Yes, it does create 2 analysis. So what you should have by running that one module 3 CloudFormation template is you should have the data sets. You should have 2 dashboards. I have 4, ignore the ones on the outsides. Just look at the ones that have my name in them. And I should have 2 analysis. So this is going to be CTR analysis, and this is going to be contact lens analysis. And analyses are pretty interesting because this is where if you say, well, hey, the views that you're showing me are great, but I want them to look different. I want to be in dark mode. That's where you do this at. Oh, I don't want this to be a bar graph. I want this to be a different type of a chart. I want to have multiple elements that are here. I really want to configure what filters or what menu options, what options exist here. Or I want to duplicate things and then modify them. You're going to do all of that within your analysis. So you'll be able to see things here. What's your x-axis? What are the values that you're taking a look at? All of these different components that build out the dashboards. Again, all that heavy lifting that was taken away from you just from an easy deploy CloudFormation template doesn't mean that that's the final state. And ideally, I'd hope that it wouldn't be the final state. And so do definitely dive in here to the analyses that were configured for you and take a look at how you would make this different. Maybe dark mode's not your thing. Maybe you like, the soothing blue of the seaside. Or you want, colors to be bolder, or you want to create your own. You have the full flexibility to not just visualize the data, but do it in a way that's going to make sense to you. And then from there, You have additional actions, you have alerts, you have insights that you can set up. I mean, right here, I know this is some sample mock data, but it's telling me, the highest day with average customer sentiment was today. Maybe I add things to an anomaly sheet and be alerted on when those anomalies happen. So it's all within the analysis that you're able to dive deeper into the power of QuickSight to get recommendations, KPIs, identification or suggestions for anomalies, in addition to configuring raw filters, your visualization components. These can all be, dragged onto the screen and be used as a particular layer. And then from here, you have all these different visualization types that I'm not going to dive all the way into. Great, you have your own dashboard. Publish. Take what you've done, take what we've given you from a foundation perspective, and then publish your own dashboard that has your own flair to it, that has the own metrics and insights and visualizations that are going to make sense to you. You do that out of the analysis. I think that's a great question to bring up.
That's awesome, Alex. Thank you. And I think the one key thought from that comment that I want to double down on is, these blog series that we write, the essays, the workshops, we get together, we build these things. They're meant to be a starting point for you. So to Alex's point, like, this is a jumping off point to get you started, to get you the right architecture. If you look at your data and you go, hey, Athena is too small for us, we're a huge, massive enterprise, we need to use Redshift, you can interchange components here, right? The process is what's important here. And then the visualizations, do what works for you. And as you customize your data, you're going to have different KPIs or metrics or insights that are going to matter to you, that drive your business. And you're going to want to focus on them and make those the stars. And so keep in mind that what we're showing you, this isn't the end all be all. This is the answer for everyone. Here's a getting started point that'll get you 80 or 90% of the way there, and then take it and make it your own.
Exactly. And then I think to kind of highlight that just a little bit, I just refreshed my contact lens dashboard now. I filtered on my user, which previously was showing 0 sentiment. Now it's showing 1. So yay, there was a positive customer interaction that I had there. We could take a look at, all of my users and see how that ratio changes. Not great, but better than what it was now that I've added some more data, and, more positively. So you should start to see your data come through, and as you make more examples, more calls, you can continue to refresh and get those insights. But I want to show more about what's next. So now, ideally, if you follow these 3 modules, or at least kind of taken some notes, you're going to do this on your own at a separate point in time, using the workshop that you have available to you, you should have a decent idea of how to get access to the data that comes out of Amazon Connect, how to get access to the contact records, how to get access to the contact lens data, start to think about how that can be used in your environment. But I want to show you a couple of different dashboards that kind of take this a little bit further, or maybe give you a different perspective. This isn't a right or a wrong, but it's a really art of the possible, or a way to think about different ways to use QuickSight to visualize. And so this dashboard here looks a whole lot different than the one that we were just working with. That's because it has a little more flair to it. It's got an image embedded in it, and it really pops. Pink might not be your color, but you can't argue that it's not eye-catching. And so here you're able to see very quickly, if you're a contact center leader, how many calls, how many were abandoned. I'd argue that's probably a terrible rate. And get maybe some of the key metrics, some of the the KPIs that are going to be important to you, like average answer time, or average call duration, or maybe you want to see how many calls were handled via self-service or an AI bot. And when we talked about how you can bring data in from multiple sources, things like call trends, things like call outcomes, things like call sources and outcomes, these are all ones that you can generate based on the records we talked about today. You could take your data, your contact records, and get those components here today. But what's interesting about this particular dashboard is it introduces the idea of churn risk. There's some flavor text up here saying that this does include churn prediction using machine learning. So you're not limited to taking your data directly from Amazon Connect. What this dashboard shows you is the data that you're emitting from Connect, in this particular case, was ran against a machine learning model, likely via SageMaker, to predict or suggest which ones were more at risk to churn. And it could be using underlying customer data, it could be using different risk factors, demographic data, but it's highlighting, it's removing all of those different layers, and it's highlighting too, in this case, a supervisor, are these at risk? What do we need to do? Are there actions that should be taken based on what we're seeing here? And so we're augmenting the existing contact center data with other services, in this case, machine learning, to provide additional insights into a single place. So don't think of the dashboards that you're creating or think of the visualizations that you're doing as entirely limited to the data provided by Amazon Connect. That's a starting point. And it can then be enhanced, or you can have additional insights based on that data that's available. One other example that I want to show, this here is a little bit more abstract when we talk about the contact center use case. But I do want to show it, one, because it's dark mode, and so you get to see what something looks like without all that white in your face, if that's what you're into. But it also brings together a variety of different data in a way that allows for easy consumption. And so the contact center, the Amazon Connect data, can be a subset of this that helps power it. Now, this is a completely made up health dashboard, that talks about risk categories and takes into account fake patients and fake PII data there to go ahead and take a look at risk levels. But this could be augmented based on customer profile data or augmented based on contact data. Does the risk score go up or down based on if they had successfully engaged or whether they had abandoned even on a contact? Or think about this from an airline perspective. Do cancellations, let's say, we have a heat map of cancellations in the Northeast. How does that impact then customer sentiment, and are there proactive ways or ways to be better reactively to handle those types of conversations? And so you can really bring together all these disparate data types in a single unified view to make the decisions and insights that are needed across the organization. Here's an example of a unified customer profile. In this case, that's using fake health data that could be certainly augmented by data from the contact center itself. A high-risk individual maybe has scheduled a procedure. How do we go ahead and indicate the likelihood that they make that appointment based on if they've responded to our text messages or phone calls or if they've reached out to us? And so you can get even very individual level insights and details that then can be augmented or enhanced by the data collected within your contact center. That's about it that we wanted to really show as far as how you can really extend tools like QuickSight to take advantage of the data that you have across your organization, inclusive of the contact center. The main goals here were to make sure that you were able to successfully complete modules 1, 2, and 3, with 3 being the automatic creation of 2 QuickSight dashboards, datasets, and analysis. And then understand how you can take the data that we've, the pipelines and the samples and templates that we've generated for you, and be able to extend that and customize and really hopefully come out of this session here understanding better how you can unlock your data, how you can take what's currently happening inside your environment and be able to react to it, to gain insights, to set up alerts, to identify anomalies, and do so in a way that allows you to be more operationally efficient and operate your day-to-day in a more straightforward and streamlined fashion. I don't think we have anything else that we wanted to show through this process today. I will just highlight that we did run through all 3 modules of the workshop. If you are done, there are cleanup instructions here, so you can go ahead and tear down or delete these processes that exist, but you're currently welcome to continue using this or follow through the additional blogs in the blog series. The additional blogs, I will actually pull that up real quick and just talk through how you could extend what you've already done here today with some additional data types. So I'm going to click on all of these and we'll walk through these one by one. So today, if you followed the workshop, you did part 1. And that's getting your contact records streamed into a centralized S3 bucket to be the foundation for your data lake. An important thing to keep in mind here too, I don't know if we really called it out, is that Amazon Connect keeps data stored inside of Connect for 24 months. And by streaming this data out into a S3 bucket that you manage, you get to control the life cycle. You get to control how long that data is going to exist or persist for. We also ran through part 2, which is taking your contact lens data, which is going to be enhanced with the contact trace record data, and get that into the same bucket so you can visualize it. Module 3 generated automatic dashboards for us. So we didn't have to do any customization inside QuickSight to start gaining insights and getting visibility into our data. You can certainly take that further and do some additional customization based on your own needs. These extra blogs, the extra parts in the series, part 3 is going to talk about chat and chat sentiment. And so you'll see that the end result is always getting that data into this S3 bucket, but it's going to follow a process similar to what we do inside of Contact Lens today. And it's going to take the chat transcripts out of S3, use EventBridge, and then use Comprehend to get the sentiment just for those chat transcripts specifically. Part 4 of the series here is going to go ahead and enhance the contact trace record experience with Amazon Lex logs, so you can better see your chatbot performance. So again, the biggest takeaway here is we're trying to get this data in this centralized S3 data lake. In this case, we're going to use Lex, feeding data into CloudWatch, and then using Kinesis and a Lambda processor to transform that to be an appropriate format for visualization. I think if I actually go to the all the way at the bottom here, you can see a little bit of an example of average customer sentiment in certain sections and be able to react to that appropriately. And then the last blog that is currently available is agent events. So this is where we get into the agent event string. This is where we can take some of the real-time data using the data stream that we have here, extending that beyond just contact data stream, be able to visualize that. And this gets us data types like log in, log out reports, agent status reports, and really those agent level status details that can be emitted and extended with Amazon Connect. Now you can visualize that and gain insights in a single environment. That is the end of really the full blog series and some of the different ways that you can take what you built today and extend that out. And hopefully everyone's able to, if there's interest, follow those and continue on through. I don't know, Jeremy, if we're dropping those links in chat or if I need to go ahead and bring those through. But I just want to make sure that everyone.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you want to drop the links for the blogs 4 and 5 in the chat, I'm answering 1 or 2 last questions here, and then I'll pull up the slide. I did drop the link for the survey in the chat, and I'll pull up that slide. I'll take over the screen share here in a minute and pull up that slide so we can take any questions that are left.
Gotcha. And it's actually 3, 4, and 5 because we did 1 and 2 and then QuickSight. So I did just put those links to 3, 4, and 5 into the chat for anyone that wants to go ahead and take those and kind of dive in a little bit further.
All right, and then I'm gonna take over the screen share.
Take it away.
While you're doing that, Jeremy, I am going to also drop a link in the chat for where the on-demand recording of this session will be posted within about a week.
Awesome, thank you. The other Alex, we have 2 Alexes making things go smoothly for all of you. First, on behalf of Alex and myself, we really want to thank everybody for taking the time. We know everybody has busy schedules. It's a lot to take this amount of time, and we had some great attendance, great interaction, and a lot of people participating here. So thank you for that. As I mentioned earlier, we are a data-driven culture. We want your feedback. We want to know what you liked. We want to know what you struggled with. It's how we build better workshops. It's how we put on better events for you. It's also how we get credit for the work that we've done. So if you wouldn't mind, please scan the QR code or click on the link in the chat or copy it down from the screen there, but fill out the brief survey. It's not a long survey. Just let us know how we did, how the topic was, what you liked, what you didn't like, how we can do it better, right? We're always trying to improve and deliver the best for our customers. With that, I think we will open it up for questions. And Alex, I can no longer see them now because of the way everything goes when I'm presenting. If you can keep an eye on the Q&A or the chat there for any last questions, we can answer any outstanding questions that arise. Nothing's popping up. All right. I will say again, on behalf of Alex and myself, thank you so much for attending today. Please be sure to provide some feedback and let us know, again, what you thought. And there were a couple questions I guess I'll address that I saw on Roadmap. I addressed them one off. We can't talk about Roadmap in public forum, but please reach out to your AWS account team to set something up. And then there were a couple specifics, like I tried this, I ran into an issue and I can't get past it, kind of thing that related to importing past data. I would also highly suggest getting your AWS account team and a Connect specialist involved so that we can help guide you through those activities, get you the help that you need. Alex, anything else? Any
I don't think
questions
so. And
popping up?
I don't see any additional questions in the chat.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you so much.
Well, somebody raised a hand and left. They must have clicked the wrong button there.
I think that was a two hands raised. I think that was not a that, but a that. That was a thanks.
Cool.
All right. Thanks everyone for spending some time with us today. Hopefully you learned something, and hope to see you at the next one.